Greetings from University Malaysia, Terengganu, Malaysia. I am Hafiz Burhanuddin and I am your moderator for today. So welcome to our third webinar forum that is awesomely organized by our UMT Marina Club of Marine Biology program from the Faculty of Science and Marine Environment UMT in collaboration with the Sustainable Ocean Alliance or SOA Malaysia. All right, so today we are going to speak about this very exciting session, which is COVID-19 friends or foe to coral reef conservation. So in other words, does COVID-19 helps in coral conservation or the other way around? All right, as we all aware of, this pandemic opened up massive changes on planet Earth and also to all of us. It has changes human activities on the planet and it lead to some say a natural healing process, and it has changed the way we live, the way we interact, communicate with one another, the way we work, and even changes on the Earth climate. So ultimately, our business is not going to be as usual as before. Joining me today is a pair of very enthusiastic coral conservationists and industry players to discuss how those changes impacted our reef ecosystem, okay? Whether or not the coral thrive or, and survive better, and how does this affect the socio-economic blocks of the communities that depends on this ecosystem, and whether or not COVID-19 is a friend to us or a foe to our coral reef conservation efforts. So I will briefly tell you about how is the flow of our program today. We're going to divide these tight 50 to 60-minute sessions into 4 parts, which are threats to coral reef, and then conservations of coral reef management, and socio-economy of the islanders, okay? And at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A session from the audience. So for those who have any inquiries or questions, please leave your questions on the comments sections of our Facebook page, Diary Campus Biology Marine page. And for those registered through our Zoom, you can leave your question in this chat space, right? The selected question will be answered during the Q&A session. And for those who did not get their answer today, we will try to deliver it to you through email, or we will post it in our Facebook page later on, right? So before we begin, on behalf of Ocean Hope and UMT, I would like to thank Majlis Belia Malaysia, Global Environment Center, Reef Check Malaysia, Diverse Clean Action, Sea Angle Indonesia, Project Map O Debris, Grass Malaysia, and RHB for your generous supports to us in conducting this Ocean Hope webinar 2020. And I would like to further extend our welcome to our local and international friends from Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia, FNN, Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan Indonesia, Pusat Co-Curriculum Negeri Terengganu, dan Malaysian Nature Society. Okay, welcome to all of you. Welcome to our webinar session number 3. All right, so I'm sure some of you, if not all, have read some info about our panelists for today, but before we proceed, let us invite our panel to introduce themselves just a little bit more. So the first one is James Tanjung Hong, or Dr. James. Can you please say a little bit more of yourself and your research background? James?
Hi, Hafiz. Thank you very much. Okay, in order to, hi everyone. Okay, so in order to introduce myself, I would like to share some pictures, and also pretty pictures with you. So I'm Tan Chun Hong, okay, that's the name my mom gave me, but everyone call me James. And I'm a coral biologist and ecologist. So I started my interest into the coral reef by, through the lens of my camera. So I like to take pictures, especially pretty pictures. So as what you can see over here, of this coral reef. And then I study the reef in particular, okay? I study on the reproduction of the reef that you can see over here, but this will be a long story for next time, okay? And okay, that's all. Pass to
all right.
Hafiz.
Thank you, James. Very beautiful pictures indeed. In today's session, James will be focusing on threats and conservation of coral reef from local and across the global perspective, as well as how COVID-19 or MCO affects these efforts. Okay, and then we are our second panelist, Mr. Alvin, with us today. So Alvin, can you please introduce yourself a little bit more?
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alvin, yeah, and I work for Reef Check Malaysia. Okay, I work for Reef Check Malaysia, which is basically part of the Reef Check network. We have offices in over 90 countries and territories around the world. In Malaysia, we focus a lot on eco-action, which is the surveys to monitor the health of the reefs, on science, advocacy, and management. So we really want to see sustainably managed coral reefs around the country. And we think that the best way to do this is to co-manage coral reefs. So get the local community and stakeholders involved in managing these reefs. And basically that's what I do. So thanks a lot for having me here. Thank you, Dr. James, for inviting me. And thank all of you for your time, for coming to listen to this morning.
All right. Thank you very much. Introduction for Reef Check Malaysia. I think Reef Check Malaysia is also one of our very good supporters for our program and also to our marine biology program in UMT. All right. Alvin particularly will lead on community engagement and sustainable livelihood of the islanders or people depending on coral reef ecosystem. And he actually based in Tioman Island, Malaysia. So we will be asking him around those area, question around those area later on. Okay, guys, welcome on board to both of you. Okay, so without further ado, so let's start off with James. So you're going to speak about coral threats and conservation. But first, I believe you will briefly introduce to us on the general aspects of coral reef. So what would you like to say about that, James? You can start.
All right, thank you. I think before we talks about the threat, we should actually all understand about what are the reef, okay, and then why they are important to us. All right. So if you look at again, go back to this picture that I liked it very much. It's actually a coral reef. The coral reef actually resemble our tropical rainforest. It resembles the tropical rainforest in the sense that they are very high in biodiversity. So for Malaysia, okay, we are situated within the Coral Triangle region. All right, and then so where the coral reef of Malaysia are part of the areas with the highest marine species in the world. So it is estimated, by the scientists that in Malaysia, okay, we have over 500 to 550 species of hard coral. Okay. All right, and then inside the hard coral itself, okay, there are many animals that live associated with the coral reef. Okay, so if you look at a healthy coral reef, it can house for more than 1,000 species of marine animals. Okay, which means that if you want to count in terms of the individuals, we can have millions of animals that live within the coral reef that you see. Okay, of course, okay, if it's a healthy one. All right, but what is actually coral reef? Okay, so apart from this, so a lot of people would like to say they are rocks. This is what the first thing that my student tell me, Doctor, ini nampak macam batu je, semua dah mati dah. No, this is not the case actually. So if you do zoom down, okay, zoom into using a microscope and look into it, you can actually see this what we call a coral polyp. So all this here is actually coral polyp, and then all this is actually the tentacles. So they are animals, okay. They have mouths and then they feed using their tentacles. All right, but that is not the end of this about the reef, okay. But if you further focus into this tissue of this coral over here, then you can see all these golden brown color. Okay, this is actually the algae or we call them the zooxanthellae, okay, that live on the surface tissue, okay, of the coral. All right. So these are surface zooxanthellae. They actually like the plant, okay, they photosynthesize, and then after that, okay, they live in a symbiotic relationship with the coral. Okay. So coral, they are animals, but they have plant that live on their surface tissue. Isn't that amazing? Okay. So so you might not believe that they look amazing. So you can look at this picture over here. Okay, isn't this look like a flower to you? Okay, so this is actually a very unique what we call the blue coral. Okay, because their skeleton is actually have some bluish iron that settle on them. Okay, so what actually are the function of the reef? Okay, so the first, okay, so because the reef, they actually is a habitat or house for many marine animals, which including the fish. Okay, so they are providing, in terms of protein, especially to our coastal region. All right, like Malaysia. Okay, a large population in Malaysia. Okay, or in Southeast Asia. Okay, actually depending on fish as our source of protein. Okay, and then the second one, okay, in terms of their ecological function of the coral reef. So a healthy reef is actually serve as a coastal protection, like the man-made barrier, okay, like what you see on the Great Barrier Reef. Okay, so with the barrier that they built, the reef built, it actually helps to absorb the energy from the wave and then protect our coast. And then, of course, because of this vibrant color of the reef, and then with all these, different marine fishes, crabs, nudibranch that live on them, then, it become an attraction. Like, at the background that you see, okay, over here, this is Pulau Bidong, our University Malaysia Terengganu Marine Research Station. Okay, and then like, some of the famous other island, like Pulau Tioman, okay, Pulau Perhentian, okay, even like Sipadan. Okay, so they are the attraction because of the coral reef that attract all the fish and all that. Okay, so imagine if there's no coral, there's no fish, it's only island. You go there and then you only see sand, okay, and sea and the water. So you want to spend money and go there? All right, okay. And then the last one is actually they people have been looking into the marine environment, okay, for new medicine. All right, especially in coral reef, for example, because of this, again, there's a millions of animals that stay in there, okay, and then many of them can be a potential medicine. All right. So now I want to bring you to what are the threats that we are seeing on the reef. Okay, so for that, there's two sections. The first one that you see on the top over here, okay, is what we call the natural threats. Threats that actually generate because of the natural environment, like the wave, okay, the wave action. All right, as I mentioned earlier, okay, one of their ecological function is actually to absorb this energy. So when they absorb the energy, some of the coral will break. After that, after some time, some will regrow. That is completely normal for them. Okay, and then the second one, okay, is actually sedimentation. Okay, a natural river runoff, during raining time, and then after that, when it flows down, to the sea, and then it creates some threats to them. All right, so coral, they have some ability to adapt to that situation, okay, and continue to thrive. This is quite normal for them. And then they also have their natural predator. Like I think if you are a diver or you are a marine biologist, you should know this is actually the crown of thorn starfish. Okay, the Acanthesta species. So they are natural predator. They feed on the coral. So under natural condition, it's quite normal to see them, maybe one per hectare. Okay, their function is, to eat some of the fast growing coral, and then after that, let the slow growing coral to continue to thrive. All right, and then after that, we have some diseases as well, okay, in the natural environment, like what you see over here. So these are the natural threats. So let's move to the anthropogenic threats or man-made threats. So I think this is one of the typical scene that you can see, in a very tourist hotspot area. Okay, hopefully not really that many more actually now in Marine Park, okay, of Malaysia. But I think this is a common scene, you know, people actually step on the coral, live coral, okay, assuming that they are actually just rocks, okay. So this is actually, you know, not good for them. You are actually killing them. And then what we call unsustainable practice or destructive fishing method, okay. We don't actually have this many cases in Peninsular Malaysia, but you know, over Sabah area or the Sulawesi Sea, okay, we got many report of what we call fish bombing, okay. So with this fish bombing, it's actually a practice that you can get the fish in easily, okay. But you know, the downside is, of course, you know, once you bomb, you know, the reef, okay, you actually, you know, destroy the reef, you know, at once. So everything will turn into rubble after that. Okay, and then after that, the next threat that we have over here is pollution. Okay, pollution come from mainland. Okay, pollution come from human activity. Okay, run off from untreated sewage. So all this is actually, you know, a very severe threats that is facing by the coral reef. And of course, the last one, okay, is actually impact or the threats from the climate change. Okay, so one of the ongoing threats that we see from this climate change lead to global warming is the increase of this seawater temperature. Okay, so once you have this increase of the seawater temperature at this abnormal level, okay, what is actually will be causing is what you can see over here is all these colorful reef will actually turn to white color, or what we call coral bleaching. Okay, and it is happening. I think it's predicted to happen again this year. Okay, we are getting some warning about this heated wave is coming. Okay, and yeah, so this is very, very serious for the reef. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Jim. So there is a very comprehensive, you know, thoughts about coral reef. So we know now that we in Malaysia have more than 500 species of coral reef. This is also new knowledge for me. And then there's lots of beautiful corals and functions of the coral reef as well. But in regards to COVID-19 pandemic, I would like to ask James whether this pandemic threats to this pandemic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So this pandemic, whether this COVID-19 pandemic to our coral reef, and also, so you know that we have these movement control orders, governed. I mean, like. Give by the Malaysian government, does this also have some impacts to coral reef ecosystem? What is your think about?
All right. Thank you, Hafiz. I think this is a very interesting questions. I think a lot of people, how to say that, want to know. Okay. I think as there's a few reports to say that, you know, water become cleaner, and then air become cleaner, and then we start to see a lot of what we call animal appear when humans are not around. I think the answer is, you know, in both sides is yes and no. Okay. Yes is via no, there's a directly and indirectly impact. Okay. Locally, okay, when we have this movement control order with less people, because a lot of people actually stay at home, like not going travel, and then after that, you know, not going to island, for example, for holidays. Okay, at the local level, okay, we are able to reduce the pollution, okay, or take away some of the stress from the coral reef. Okay, a very direct remove of the threat, for example, just how I share with you, is the physical damages. Okay, that, you know, if the tourists, you know, step on the coral, for example, now no tourists means that, you know, no one actually step on the coral. Okay, that is a very direct remove of the threats. Okay, but this is, I think, what we call is very short-term effect. Okay, because at the global scales, at the larger scale, we still have to remember, you know, climate change is, you know, what is coming towards us. And when you are staying at home, for example, okay, you tend to maybe use more electricity, okay, use a lot of the energy consumption actually increase. Okay, for example, normally you would just share the air condition, central air condition in your office or in your workplace or in the classroom. But now, okay, everyone at home, okay, you might just switch on your individual air condition, and then after that, everyone are using their handphone, charging their handphone, and then everyone is turning on their laptops and lights and so on. Okay, so with this, increased consumption of the energy, okay, we might actually contribute, more, okay, towards climate change, which will actually lead, okay, to the impact of one of the largest threats, okay, at the global scales to the coral reef. All right. Okay, so in short, okay, with this COVID-19 pandemic, okay, and the movement control in Malaysia, of course, the same for around the world. Okay, we may see some decrease at the certain extent of the local threats, okay, at the very local level. Okay, for example, reduce of pollution, as I say, okay, or remove of this physical damage on the coral reef. Okay, but we must remember that, okay, we have bigger threats that we have to control. Okay. On the other hand, also, with this, as I say, with the remove of these local threats, okay, this might provide an opportunity for us to understand these threats, okay, that we can actually, or human or the management can actually control them. Okay. For example, okay, for these tourists, the physical damage, apart from the tourists, so the management maybe see that we can impose or improve, okay, the rules and regulation and the education on how to control these threats and so on. All right. Okay, so the last thing is just to remember at the global level, okay, these are movement control likely to have any positive impact in battling the threats, okay, for climate change phenomenon. Okay.
Thank you very much, Jim. So basically, we still have to look into a larger perspective of, like conservation, because I believe the COVID-19 pandemic is maybe, we could say it's a short term, and then it could actually, like reduce stress in one particular period of time. But then people still have to, like navigate themselves how to live sustainably. That at the end, for the long term, it provide better Earth ecosystem, Earth climate, electricity, whatsoever. But then, so what can you elaborate more about what can people do during the MCO then to help the coral reef? You say that electric wires and stuff like that. So can you elaborate more on that?
All right, I think for the local people that stay near to the coast, or if they are staying on the island, for example, okay, the local people over there, what they can contribute, okay, in reef conservation and protection. For example, one, they can record the animal that they observe, okay, because in a normal time, what we call the normal time, you don't see them because of the human occurrence over there. But this is the time, okay, you can help to record the animals that you normally don't see them over there. Okay, so this actually will help to establish and then also increase the baseline data, okay, about the animal or the diversity that we have around us. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, okay, I believe that if individually you can do some clean up, like the bleach clean up if you're actually on the island, okay, and then you can help to clean the beach, and then you can also help to sort the rubbish, and then that will actually help the people, okay, and then also the scientists to understand where the rubbish come from, for example, and then the abundance and so on. This is very useful in terms of the management of the waste. And then after that, okay, what you can do also, you can report of activities that threaten the reef. For example, if you are living within the proximity of marine protected areas, okay, if you see any fishing, illegal fishing or fishing with illegal gears or oil spill, all right? So then you can make the report, okay, to the authority, okay? So, but you know, what happens if you are not staying near the
Right.
coast and then you are staying in the city, right?
How about
Yeah,
those
okay.
living in urban area?
Okay, I think what you can do for those people, you know, staying in the city, okay, first, okay, very important that if you actually go online and then join this webinar like this one, and then to increase your knowledge and awareness on coral reef conservation and protection. And then you can also support local NGOs like, you know, LV Reef Check over here, WWF Malaysia, MNS, okay, by donation, okay, right? Because, you know, to do this conservation, you know, it always need money, and then, you know, they actually in need of money. The donation is a good way. And then also when times permit, then you can do voluntary work. Okay, voluntary, even online, I think, you know, you can try to do some voluntary work with the NGO if they need someone, for example, to analyze the data and so on. Okay, but overall, what everyone can do, okay, to help our, you know, Mother Earth is actually to reduce energy consumption. Before you turn on the AC, you know, 24 hours, if you are going to, okay, then maybe you can think, okay, do I need that? Okay, and then reduce wastage. I know that because of this, you know, pandemic, everyone is using, you know, have to do what we call take out, and then everyone is using plastic bag, you know, and all that. That is something that we cannot avoid, okay? But, you know, we can try to reduce and reuse, okay, the plastic bag and the plastic container, all right? And then also recycle. So that is what, you know, everyone can do.
All right, all right. Thank you very much, James, for very comprehensive answers on those questions. I think basically for those, you know, what we can do now is actually during this MCO, you can do reportings. If you see any of these animals, you can also report any suspicious activities happening around you, like, you know, bombing, fish bombing and whatnot. All right. So thank you, James, for that. We are now moving on to our second panelist, Alvin. He's going to speak about more about for those community or people living in the island. So I'm sure there are a lot of you know, impacts to those people. And the first one is I want to ask to you, how does this COVID-19 pandemic affected the reef managers, those have, you know, like resorts or dive centers and stuff like that? Alvin, can you elaborate on that?
Hi. So, reef managers. Okay. So I think I'll start with talking about people who are trying to organize conservation activities, or people like the Department of Marine Parks and Sabah Parks who are in charge of managing the natural resource from coral reefs, right? Now, one of the big problems was, 1 minute, why is it not clicking? Sorry. Okay. So, yeah, the biggest change from COVID-19 was actually the implementation of the movement control orders, right? Like James mentioned earlier. And these were put in place for our own safety, to stop the spread of the virus. And yes, it's important, we know it. And for reefs, the big difference was, especially those that were visited by tourists, suddenly there's no more tourists, right? So with less people on the reefs, you've got less pollution, less damage, like was mentioned. And this is a good thing, obviously. Reefs are having a time to recover. Animals are more comfortable coming closer to humans. And in fact, for a lot of the reefs along the east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, it's been an extended period because since November, since the start of the monsoon, we've barely had any tourists. So the reef has had a long period of rest, which is a good thing. Yeah. The second change for managers, for reef managers, this period is actually a good time for us to look at how the environment is improving. Yeah, conduct tests, do research, think about site closures, think about limiting numbers of people. Now, very seldom do we get opportunity to study these kind of things. We've had cases, for example, Chernobyl 30 years ago, where overnight all the humans were taken away, and now 3 decades later, they are seeing wildlife thrive in this place. But this was long-term, this was total removal of humans, right? We've also seen something similar recently with Maya Bay in Thailand, where the government decided to stop tourists from going there to help the reef recover. And same thing, very soon after people stopped going, because they were getting like thousands of people daily. Very soon after they closed it, they started to see sharks returning. But again, it's very anecdotal. There hasn't been proper research coming out yet. And similar was also seen when they closed Boracay. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but Boracay was a very popular tourist destination in the Philippines. And due to pollution, it was closed down for a while so that the government could relook and revamp their waste management system on the island. After which they opened back to tourism. And again, there were reports of how the environment was recovering. But again, anecdotal, no proper study. So this, for me, is an opportunity that reef managers should be getting as much data as we could right now, studying the impacts of short-term closures and looking at how the reef is doing at this moment. So this is definitely a plus point from the MCO.
Okay, so that's a very interesting point. So that so basically this time is the time for a reef to recover, for the time for reef to have a good rest. And then, so you mentioned it's, so we have the monsoon, it already started from November, and then it continues with this COVID-19 break. So it's already about, maybe about half a year break for the reef, right? Okay, yes. And then you mentioned also about studies and research on this reef during this COVID. Are you actually allowed to research in the field during this MCO time?
No, sadly, we are not allowed. I thought that after the initial 2 weeks, me being on Tioman Island, which is a green zone, 0 cases, 2 weeks has passed, we are all safe, we would be allowed to go back and start collecting data. But that is not the case. We have not been allowed to get back into the water. And it's unfortunate because we are wasting this opportunity to collect this valuable information. Also, during the last couple of weeks, coral spawning was in April. It's something I've been studying since 2014, and we couldn't do it this year properly. And like James mentioned, the NOAA satellites have been warning of bleaching since March. We actually work with NOAA to help them ground truth their satellite data, and this is something that we've not been able to do as well. There's been a couple of dead turtles and a dead dolphin that washed up on Tioman. Again, we were not able to do a necropsy to look at it to find out what could have caused the death. One of it was an olive, which is rare on Tioman, so it was a shame that we just had to quickly bury it and then couldn't do anything else. Another thing is we are not only not allowed to do scientific research, we're not allowed to do any conservation work at all, right? And we actively remove ghost nets from the reef, yeah? On Tioman alone, since January, we've removed about 8 nets, total about 2 tons. And these nets need to be removed as soon as possible. If we are slow and late, we often find dead animals, sharks, turtles caught and dead. So I don't even want to think about what's out there right now. I just hope there's no nets, but this is another issue we faced. Also, unfortunately, some irresponsible parties have taken this time, this MCO period, as an opportunity to go and illegally harvest marine life. So not only within marine protected areas, but just illegally harvesting marine life. I guess they thought that people would not be patrolling. And to a certain extent, it is true, like James said, we've lost a lot of our eyes and ears on the ground, because usually a lot of the reports come in from boat operators, from snorkel guides, from boatmen, from dive masters. But now, since they are not out in the field, we are not getting this information. But thankfully, we know that the Department of Fisheries have been working hard, and they've been able to catch a couple of boats already that have been illegally operating inside protected areas. We've even had reports of boats from Vietnam coming all the way down to Tioman waters, yeah. But thankfully, our enforcers are still out there every day doing their work. It's also been reported that on some beaches, trash has accumulated because there are no volunteers doing any more cleanups during this movement control order. So that's another issue. And also my colleagues in Sabah were telling me that where they are based, fish bombing activities has actually increased. Yeah, so a lot of the people have started fish bombing, and even sometimes closer to the island because they don't want to go too far off. So that's really unfortunate. Yeah, but these are some of the issues we've had. Also, not forgetting, I would say, is education work. Yeah, a lot of NGOs spend a lot of time educating local communities, having programs with them, trainings with them, programs and trainings that would benefit the local communities, and everything has come to a stop. For us on Tioman, like we teach in the primary and secondary school every month, at least once. And all that obviously has come to the stop. And now when school reopens, I think they'll be too busy catching up with what they've missed out to give us any time with the students, yeah? But not only that, like trainings, we had planned a bunch of trainings to help locals get jobs, and now all these have been put on a hold. We don't, no idea when we'll be allowed to do it again. We are looking at doing it remotely, doing it through Skype or Zoom or something like that. But it's a bit tricky when these communities, not everyone has a personal PC at home. And but we're looking at options and thinking, how can we go about this current situation?
All right. Okay. Thank you, Erwin, for that. I think what I can take from your message just now is about we during this MCO, there's less activities that is governed officially by our officers. So we also lost our eyes and ears, you know, like for any encroachment, for any poaches that are happening in the ocean. So for all the audience or citizens out there, this is your time for you guys to play your role and also maybe help to report to any authorities, maybe marine park departments, or you know, maritime and so on. Alvin, moving on to the you mentioned about you give education to the local people, the communities and so on, and how is they are dealing now? I mean, like they depends on the reef for their livelihood. So how has COVID-19 affected their livelihood, you know, during this time?
Okay, so on many of the tourism islands like Tioman, for example, a large percent of the population depends on tourism to earn their income. Yeah, on Tioman, actually 97% of the population depends on tourism. And the MCO has definitely affected them badly. Yeah, and again, bear in mind that a large number of them are self-employed. So they haven't had a proper salary since November. Since the start of the monsoon, there hasn't been much tourism on the island. So they haven't actually had a proper salary since then. So it's very difficult for them, yeah? Now, the government has helped. They have provided handouts. There have been different schemes to give money to the people who have been badly affected. But again, these are not long-term solutions. These are helping this is helping the situation right now, but they are not long-term solutions. Yeah. And I think it is a good time for us to look into diversifying the local economies. Yeah. A lot of them are too dependent on tourism, yeah, or only dependent on fisheries. A single economy will not work. We need to diversify economies. We need to make sure that there is social resilience. among the local community. And this is something that Reef Check has been working on. Like on Tioman, when we started in 2014, the program was to look at social and ecological resilience, but we were always thinking just to climate change. But now, you know, so we were thinking like, yeah, we might lose the reefs, so let's diversify tourism. But now we realize that, oh, wait a minute, it's not just climate change. We need to start thinking of, yes, climate change and extreme weather conditions, but we need to think of increasing economic crises, like we've been seeing around the world in other countries, how economies have just tumbled. We also need to look at pandemics, yeah, because this is something that, what I've been reading, this is something that might be happening more frequently. So yeah, we need to diversify economies. And people have asked me like, why is Reef Check so involved with social economy and working with the community? Well, the reason is, if the local populations are not earning a livelihood, cannot earn money, then they cannot go to the grocery shop and buy food. So they are going to look at their reef and say, hey, there's my source of food, there's my grocery shop. And they're going to start going in and harvesting from the wild, right? And that is what we're trying to avoid. So if we want them not to harvest from the wild, then we need to make sure that they are able to sustain their life. Yeah. Now, the other thing that's really worrying me is I've been looking, as we, like in Malaysia right now, we are moving into slowly reopening the economy and starting businesses again. I've been looking at the different SOPs given out by the different government agencies, but also by agencies, international agencies. And I'm truly worried, yeah, because for example, I looked at the SOP for diving, and they are talking about using a lot of disinfectants, a lot of bleach, chlorine. Where is all these chemicals going to end up? You're talking about having dunk tanks to wash your gear soaked in liters and liters of chemicals. And at the end of the day, are these chemicals going to be poured down the drain, straight back onto the reef? Yeah. For the last how many years we've been working with Greenfins through the Greenfins program to get dive centers to reduce their use of chemicals. And now we are basically telling them, if you don't use these chemicals, you cannot open shop again, right? So it's difficult. I understand the need for safety. I understand the need to open businesses once again, but I think the natural environment cannot be the one ending up with the short end of the stick. We need to make sure that the reefs are still protected, yeah? And honestly, I think it is possible, right? I think if there was a proper voice advice coming out, guiding people how to go about protecting their business and safety at the same time, not at the loss of the environment, I personally believe that businesses would be willing to follow. And we've seen this during the MCO. We have seen how Malaysians have come together to make sure that nobody is like losing out, right? Even on the island, we've seen it. We've had the JKK come out and provide food for the people. We've had the different government agencies, Tioman Development Authority, JPAM, the police working together to keep people safe. I've had dive shop owner call me and say like, if you know anybody that's really in hard times and no food, let me know. I'll get them food. I'll pay for food, right? I know dive shop owners who are literally taking out money out of their own pockets, out of their own savings, just to ensure they can give their staff a little bit of money to survive this period. So yeah, if you ask me, this COVID situation is no friend, yeah, to coral reef conservation. It's definitely not a friend. But I think that we as a society can definitely come out of this on top and make sure that coral reefs are still protected in the process.
All right, thank you very much, Alvin. This is a very interesting information, because you not only that coral rest from November, but also the economics of people living in the islands also rested from November until now. So the important message here is to diversify their economy. Where is the, where could they get their resources in, like other resources instead of just focusing on the coral. And then also with the economic crisis right now, I think it's in time for they start to look for another perspective. And on the other, on another way, the economic crisis also might lead to, like these poaching activities, illegal stuff, getting done by these people just to survive, just like what you said. And then certainly there's a lot of things to reconsider, like when you want to reopen these businesses, and then also how to balance and maintain the biological ecosystem, as well as you want to balance the economy of these people. All right, thank you very much to both of you, James and Alvin. So we are now going to move to our next session, which is Q&A sessions. And so this question is coming from the audience from today, and also those that has pre-asked us this question before. So the first one comes from Meng Lee from Malaysia. I think this question might be relevant to James, okay? The question is there any research-based evidence showing that COVID-19 virus could transmit to marine life? So perhaps James would like to say something about this. Maybe this is something to do with the mechanisms of transmission as well. James?
All right, thank you, Hafiz, and then thanks for the questions. It is very tricky questions to answer, actually. Because we know that there are animals that infected by this COVID-19 virus, okay, as you can read from the news. But as far as we know, okay, there's no any report cases of transmission of the COVID-19, okay, to the marine animals. There's no such cases reported yet. And but on the other hand, okay, if you look into the marine environment, they are full of many bacteria and viruses. Okay, so I would say that there are possibility. Okay, but I'm sure that the what you call that the scientists that are doing research on this, they might already look into that. Okay, and then I think that's why you have the SOP from the government to talking about the disinfectant on this all the dive gears, and also I think it's related. Okay, I think it's more towards prevention. All right, but there's no such report yet.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much, James. Okay, so we're moving to the next question. I think this is for Alvin. This is from Maria Fernandez from Indonesia. Hello, Maria. I hope you are with us now. How do we do to educate and help people who live around conservation area to aware the use of sustainable fishing device, long live? Oh, I think maybe what she wants to ask is about to educate people and also to use sustainable fishing device.
Okay, so I think the way to go about this is first we need to introduce whatever method we are promoting. Secondly, teach them how to use it, make it available to them, and then help them as they first start using it so that if there's any issues, it can be tweaked and they can help through it. A good example would be what MRF is doing in Malaysia with the turtle excluding devices for fishing trawls, right? So they introduced the technology, they've helped them install it, and then they're working with them to see how it could help the fishermen at the same time protect the marine life. So yeah, that's how you do it.
All right. And the next question also coming from Indonesia, from Nisrina Akila. I think this is for James. How to repair corals damaged by underwater bombing?
How to repair coral from underwater bombing?
I mean the damaged coral reef from underwater.
All right, okay. So okay, maybe let's look at what happened after we bomb the fish. After we bomb the reef. Okay, so after we bomb the reef, okay, to get the fish, the impact that we did is we actually basically shredded the whole the reef structure, okay, into pieces, what we call them rubble. Okay, so when we have the reef that turn into pieces of rubble, okay, and then the impact is actually very substantial because those you don't actually you may not cause immediate die of the coral, okay, but because it's no longer a stable structure for the coral to live, as they will roll on the sand, for example, and then eventually they will die. Okay, how can we restore the site? The first thing is we can do is actually, if human intervention, okay, the first thing what we can do is we have to stabilize the substrate, okay, to provide a stable substrate for the coral to settle or to regrow. I think there are quite a couples of technique that we can use in terms of to stabilize the substrate. We can, for example, build artificial structure. Okay, there are many methods that we can use, so I'm not going to that details, but the first thing is to have this a stable structure, and then after that, you can consider, for example, to replant the coral that already broken into pieces but still survive. Okay, you can collect them and then do a replant on this the new substrate that we provide. Okay, so if the nature is going to take control, okay, without human intervention. So what is going to happen is with this rubble, slowly, if they die, and then you have like animals to recolonize the area. For example, if you have zoanthids, okay, they'll start to colonize the area to stabilize the substrate, and then provide a space for the coral larvae to settle on. Okay, provided you have a very clean environment, and then you have a minimum of algae that grow on them, then then the whole process will start again.
Start to thrive. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, James. The next two questions is for Alvin. Alvin, this is from Johanna from Mexico. The first one is, how is the tourism sectors such as hotels, dive centers, cruise ships, theme park involved in the conservations and restorations of coral reef in Malaysia? And the second one is, what coral reef restoration programs are being developed in your region, and how is just success or failure measured? How they measured the success of a restoration program in Malaysia?
Okay, so this is an interesting question. Firstly, I would say in Malaysia, we do have many tourism players that are involved in reef conservation. Restoration is not the only way to protect coral reefs. Yeah, it's just one of the many tools, but a lot of resorts are working on responsible tourism programs. For example, we have many resorts on Tioman working towards achieving the ASEAN Green Hotel standards. So they are working to make sure that their impacts to the environment is at minimum. And we have the similar program for dive centers, which is called the Green Fins program. Yeah, it's a approach for dive centers to reduce their impacts to the environment. And again, we have many dive centers on Tioman that are actively working on this to reduce their impacts. Yeah, and none of them are doing restoration in that sense, because in fact, like if you were taking the steps to protect the reef in the first place, like if you were making sure water quality was taken care of, then you do not need to go out and plant corals, right? It doesn't make sense. If you had the reef that you have, you are taking care of it well, then they will reproduce and they will be able to spawn and cover areas of reef that you will not be able to do by physically going down to do restoration, right? So I'm not aware of any cruise companies working on coral reef conservation in Malaysia, but I might be wrong. Theme parks too, I'm not aware of any. Now, how do we assess if a reef restoration project is successful? Well, you would have to look at, firstly, has the initial cause of damage been removed? I don't understand this. A lot of people want to go down and plant corals, but they're not looking at solving sewage, right? But what caused the coral to die? If the coral in that area died because of fish bombing, like asked earlier, and you just go there and plant more corals, it's not going to solve anything because people are going to bomb it again. So you need to solve the root cause of the problem, right? Now we in Malaysia, Reef Check Malaysia monitors over 200 reefs around the country. Every year we go and do surveys to see how healthy they are, and we track their health. So that is one good way to see if the reefs in that area is being taken care of properly, right? If we see that the live coral cover keeps reducing every year, then obviously something's not proper there. But that's how we are doing it right now. We are tracking the health of the reef, and from there it gives us an idea of what needs to be done. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think that answering the question, but I think just to add on for the restoration program in Malaysia, I believe for any parties to conduct restoration, you might need to get permission from the government authorities like Marine Park and so on. So you cannot simply do it on your own, right?
Yes, that is true. If you are working inside a marine protected area, you must get permits, whether it is Sabah Parks, Sarawak State Forestry, or the Department of Fisheries, Malaysia.
Yeah, true. And also for this to monitor the failure or success of some restoration program, I think it's a very long term period of monitoring time. You need to before you can conclude whether it's a success or failure for one particular restoration program. All right, moving on to the next question. This is from Vincent Tan from Malaysia. How the scientists enhance the zooxanthellae strain and then incorporate it back to the corals? Is it legal to do it in aquaculture of coral practices? I think James can answer this.
All right, I think these questions might come from, okay, I'm just thinking, I assume that this is because, if we are trying to talk about the threats because of this climate change and to combat that, okay, especially on coral bleaching, that's why you are seeing scientists actually, testing to change, the relationship or to use a different species of these symbiotic algae and then to reintroduce them, okay, into different corals to see can we actually, make them more to increase the adaptation, okay, to this changing environment. I would say that it is interesting. It is not illegal, it's legal. Okay, why I say it's legal over here, because science is all about, this is the fun part of science. Okay, you get to explore, okay, this type of all this experiment. Okay, and then the main purpose of doing that is actually to see, okay, whether our coral reef, okay, are they able to adapt, okay, to this fast pace of this climate change. Okay, and there are many cases, okay, that we see now, okay, that no, the coral, okay, they cannot keep up the pace, okay, pace in terms of the adaptation due to this climate change. Okay, we are seeing more and more coral bleaching, and then in the global scales, okay, the mass coral bleaching event, okay, the interval time becomes shorter and shorter, meaning that they are getting lesser and lesser time to recover. All right. So yeah. So that's why people are testing if we are using a different type of zoox. I mean the symbiotic algae, because there's more than 8 species. Okay, of zoox, and then with these different species of the symbiotic algae, they have different functions, and then they have their their beneficial part. Their what you call that? They have their functions. Okay, different in the coral. All right, so yeah, so short answer, no. Okay, it's legal. Right. Okay, for research.
Thank you very much, James. Okay, moving on to the next question. Diane is a German lady living in Malaysia before the pandemic and MCO. supermarkets has just started to reduce the use of plastic bag. Now everything is taken away, so the demand and use of single-use plastic is increasing. I'm afraid. Do you think this will affect our marine ecosystem, and how can we reduce this pollution? This is a general question about single-use plastic bag and marine ecosystem. So any of you, Alvin or James, you can answer this.
Alvin?
Okay. So again, this is about attitude, right? This was discussed last Wednesday as well. And again, if you know you are going out to buy something, then why don't you bring something from your home? Yeah, the shops will definitely use a package that you have brought. If you bring a container for food, they'll let you put it there. If you bring your own bags from home, I've been bringing my own bags to the grocery shop this entire MCO period, and I've never had an issue with it. Yeah. So if you know you're going to go buy something, then bring the packaging for it. If you did not know and you already bought something which you cannot recycle, then make sure you dispose of it properly. Yeah. It goes back to attitude. Yeah, we really need to think about our actions, and I think then we'll solve this problem.
And
Yeah,
the second part of the question is, do you think it will affect marine ecosystem?
Yes, it will. If we are not smart about it, if we don't have the right attitude towards it, then yes, it will affect the ecosystem. Even before this pandemic, we've been struggling with marine debris and marine trash. So it definitely will. If we still do not take this seriously and think, it's okay to trash this environment, then we will have to.
Yeah, I think following up on Alvin's comment, I think in the what you call that, the comment from the listener as well, people asking about the impact of plastic on the reef, and for example also the microplastic. Okay, microplastic means, you know, when all these plastic waste, you know, being broken down into smaller pieces, into micro size. So all of this is a threat to the coral reef and then to the environment, and it will, you know, the threats will come to us human as well. Okay, so yes, we have to reduce the use of, you know, all these waste. Okay, and then if, as what Alvin said, if you already, you know, have that, you know, waste, okay, then you must find a proper way to, okay, discard them. Okay, all right. Of course, the best is, you know, to reduce the use of plastic bag.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we actually have a lot of questions, so we're going to be very fast now. The next one, the MCO of COVID-19 has brought us to consider the economic or monetary damage inflicted by the illness. Thus raise a lot of awareness the longer MCO extends. Why don't we put a price on ecosystem and the damage monetarily we have done on them to raise awareness? Anyhow, we are materialistic to a certain degree. So the question is, why don't we put a price on ecosystem and the damage monetarily we have done on them to raise awareness? Maybe James can answer this.
I think, okay, what you say, that a lot of this ecosystem that we see, okay, there's a price tag on them. All right, like the per hectare of reef, you know, it costs millions of dollar, and then the same for mangrove, okay, and the same for our rainforest as well, okay. But I must say here very clearly that putting a price tag, okay, on all these valuable ecosystem, it could be, you know, an illusion to tell that if I damage, you know, that particular ecosystem, then I just have to replace them with money. Okay, so I think that is a wrong concept. Okay, because, you know, all this ecosystem is actually invaluable. Okay, all right. So for example, you know, if you lost a hectare of reef, you know, in 1 or 2 months, it doesn't mean that, you know, you can replenish, you know, with your $1 million, okay, the reef in 1 or 2 months. Okay, it might take, you know, 1 year or 10 years, or it might never be recovered. Okay, but I understand that it is a must, okay, to put a price tags over there. All right, it's because, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, the price tag over there is actually, you know, if if someone create any damage, then the money will go to the restoration part. All right. Okay, but I have to make it very clear.
Yeah, maybe the price tags of this environment could give some awareness to people out there. Like, so this is how much we owe to the ecosystem, so that you have this self awareness that okay, if you lost this, they might be not be replaceable or invaluable to replace. All right.
Yeah, I think the price is actually for this ecosystem services they're provided. Okay, but not the the biological life and the function that they have over there.
Yeah, true. Right. The next question coming from our colleague Maizah Abdullah from UMT Terengganu. This is specifically to Alvin. Alvin, which condition makes you happier as conservationist, with people around the island or without the people in the island?
Oh, wow. That's a difficult one. Well, if it was an island that didn't have a local community, then I would definitely be happier with no tourists there. But if it is an island like Tioman, where we have a big local population, then no, I think we need the tourism, because it is very sad to see how families are really struggling to get through this period with no income. So it really depends on where the location is.
All right. Thank you very much, Alvin. The next question from Ameline Bular from Kuala Lumpur. Considering the illegal fishing and trade of protected marine animals, should local media report on protected species sightings, such as dolphins in Penang, turtles in PD, etc.? Should these sightings be exposed to public, or should it be remain in close contact just to some stakeholders? What do you guys think?
Okay, so if you ask me, I think that it is good to talk about this in the media, because it first of all, it makes us aware of what we have. A lot of people did not know that there were dolphins around for Dixon, yeah? And I understand the question, it means like, oh, now if more people know, will people go to hunt it? Well, the people who are actively searching out these things, they already know, right? But now, by talking about it in the media, the greater masses know about it as well. Turtle egg consumption, for example. Dr. Uzair from UMT the other day made a post about how turtle eggs were being sold on Shopee. And look how the community reacted. Look how Malaysia reacted, right? And why is that? It's because people are talking about it. People have been selling turtle eggs in Terengganu for years. It's still legal, correct? But now, when people talk about it in the media, then the greater public is aware of the issues, and definitely that's the right way to go. So I think it is not a problem with sharing this kind of information, because in the long run, it actually is greater good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also, I just want to add a bit more over here. I think when we're talking about sharing the information to the media, okay, it doesn't mean that you are giving the exact location. Okay, yeah, I think, and also sharing that to the media, also you let more people to aware of the existence of these animals at that area. Okay, you know, in other way, you actually increase the awareness of the people as well.
True. All right.
Okay.
The next one is from Eileen. I am an advocate for rational site closure in the marine parks. Considering post-MCO, would it be a good starting point with the current COVID-19 situation to work towards a policy of such with the government? Would it be a good starting point to work towards policy with the government now? I think Alvin speak about this a little bit now, just now.
Yes. So I think it's a good time to talk about policy with the government. We, for example, in Malaysia, the only place where we are limiting the number of divers is Sipadan Island, right? Everywhere else, there is no control at all. In fact, as we are talking, there are plans of developing more, so we need to talk to the government about this, decide on policies, consider these options, and test them if they are viable. Another good example would be identifying all the resilient sites in our marine protected areas and consider providing additional protection for these resilient sites, right? We know that bleaching is going to become more frequent in the future. We know that violent storms are going to increase in frequency and intensity. So we need to start looking at this so that when it happens, we already have everything in place and not then only start to think and ask and run around with no solution. Yeah.
Right,
James,
thank
you
you
want
very
to
much.
add?
I think in terms of the site closure, Malaysia, we do like, on this marine protected area itself, we do have one case study, in this 2010 coral bleaching event. So consequences of that one is the marine park do close up some of the island. Okay. I think that is a good case study that we can follow up on that one. And then this MCO provide another opportunity, okay, to follow up on another case study to follow up on this site closure. All right. And then, yes, I think it is in time. All right. And we need a political will. I think that's very important.
Okay, so so we are overwhelmed with questions right now. I think we're going to have another two more questions. Last question. The second last is coming from Rabiatul Fajri Fish from Lombok, Indonesia. Coral and more animals from the sea never report to risk transmitted COVID-19. What is important? What is the important protect about more animals in the sea? So we never have this COVID-19 transmission from the sea maybe, but so is it important to protect them, to protect more animals in the sea?
I think with or without the COVID-19, it is important to protect them already. Okay, I think what she mean over there is, it's justified to us to actually to increase the protection because they are not transmitted because of this COVID-19. I think that is what that's what she asked. But from my point of view, whether with or without the COVID-19, okay, we need to protect them already.
All right. The next one is Lisa Chen from Canada. I'm just wondering, how's the microplastic problem in Malaysia, especially from fisheries and ghost gears? Anything being done to tackle this problem? Maybe Alvin, you want to answer on this question? Microplastic problem in Malaysia from fishing gears, ghost nets, and stuff like that.
Yes, this is something that has been a hot topic for a couple of years now already, and there are various universities looking at this. We've worked with a couple of them on Tioman as well to collect data. So people are looking at this seriously, looking at how to stop it at source before it enters the ocean in the first place, and then looking at the impacts once it's already in the ocean. But yeah, all around the world, people are paying a lot of attention to microplastics and marine debris.
I think I just want to add a bit more on this microplastic, just because in the University of we actually have a group, a special interest group. Is a microplastic research interest group. Okay, they are actually looking into the impact from this microplastic, try to quantify, the numbers of microplastic on the coastal area, on the offshore island, okay, on the benthic, and then also on the animals as well. And then try to understand where they come from. I think that's the first thing that we have to do. Then only, okay, we can, try to understand how can we solve the problem. So the main thing, the thing that we are doing now, okay, is to understand where they are, okay, from where they come from. Then only we can, okay, set up, how can we deal with the problem.
Yep, true. There's a lot of aspects of microplastic need to be studied first before you can overcome these problems. Okay, guys, I have a good news for you because you guys are you has a lot of fans now. So the technical team give me two more question to ask. Okay, so I'm going to take two more question. This is from Tang Wei Kit. Okay, this is we know from Sea Aquarium. The question is, as the pollution and other environmental issues have seen to improve over the past few months due to the COVID-19 lockdown, I would like to ask, despite the coral reef can recover in this short period of time, but as economy and lifestyle return to normal after this, will it cause exponential rise in the damage to the environment, especially the coral reef, as countries and organizations tends to accelerate the economy? So I think this is about sudden, you know, disclosure of businesses, and also you know, people can start going to the island and stuff like that. So how can we, will it cause exponential rise in the damage in the environment? Maybe James want to answer this?
All right, I can provide part of the answer. Okay, I think the first one is with this lockdown, okay, we do see the environment become a little bit better. Okay, but as I say earlier, it is just a very, you know, short effect that we are seeing in a positive side. All right, okay, but don't misunderstand that, you know, the reef is actually recovering. No, all right, okay. There's still a lot of threats that, you know, as I mentioned earlier, and then, you know, I think after the MCO, will this, you know, increase of the people to the island will actually cause more damage? I think that is the question that linked to what Alvin mentioned just now. Okay, we need to have, you know, this is a golden opportunity for us to explore, okay, the policy of, you know, how can we control, you know, the numbers of tourists onto the island, and then how can we mitigate, okay, the impact on the reef, okay, with you know, proper policy and methods actually, okay, and for both, you know, the beneficial for these island people, I mean for the local economics, as well as for the people who can continue to enjoy our, you know, pristine reef, because the reef do make people happier. That's what I know, okay, because I look so happy when I go diving. Pass to Alvin.
Alvin, you want to add on that?
No, not really. I think James covered it. Yeah, I think he covered it pretty well.
Okay, thank you very much then. So I have another cue that's going to be our last question for today. So thank you very much for your very fruitful answer and a very comprehensive answer. So gentlemen, so before we end our session, definitely this pandemic is something that has never happened to us before, and we don't know when it will end, and maybe it might reoccur again. So before we stop, what is the take-home message that you guys want to say to the audience out there? Like what can be done, what it should be done by them, and so on. So maybe we start with James. James,
Okay. All right. I think one of my take-home message is with this Movement Control Order, the MCO, okay, as a consequence of this COVID-19 pandemic, okay, it might provide a break for this for the nature from us human, okay. So when we see the environment become, you know, cleaner or better, animals are roaming around places where normally they won't due to presence of human, I think it is a good sign. It is a good sign because, you know, to show to us that our nature is still full of these precious animals. Okay, it is a good sign to show that together we can make the Mother Earth a better place. Okay, but however, do not, again, you know, do not mistakenly think that our duty have ended after this MCO. Okay, the threats from climate change, okay, is at global scales, and it is coming to us, like, you know, all of us. Okay, so we Malaysian and everyone need to work together, okay, especially on, you know, reduce, reuse, and recycle, okay, to fight this actually a bigger war, okay, which is you know, impact from this climate change. Okay, so with that, we may slow down the change for the nature and for the coral reef to slowly adapt to the changing environment. That will be my take-home message to everyone.
How about you, Alvin? What is your message to the audience out there?
Okay, my message is that when we talk about coral reef management and conservation, we need to think long term, and it's very important to build ecological and as well social resilience. So we need to make sure that the communities are able to adapt to the changing climate, to economic crises, and to pandemics like this. So diversifying the economy, things like that is very important, and we need to start looking into these things.
All right, thank you very much. Great conclusion, take-home message from both of you. Definitely, COVID-19's impact is being felt not only on land, but also for the sea creatures, for the islanders, and so on. So nevertheless, the pandemic offer for us, I think, the opportunity or the chance to start over and to more appreciate our oceans, our earth, by doing things that was suggested by the two panelists just right now. Maybe play your duty, like recycle, reuse, and reduce. And also we need to think for a long-term environmental plan for sustainability. All right, before we dismiss, I would like to convey our gratitude again to both of the panelists, Alvin and James, for your time with us today. And also, there's a message from the technical teams that all the e-certificate for this audience joining the Zoom will be emailed to you directly after this. And also for those unanswered questions, we will post it on Facebook page, Diary Campus Biology Marine UMT, or also Facebook page of UMT MPP, I guess. So that's all from us. Do not forget to join us again on the last webinar session next Wednesday, I guess. And then that's all. Stay at home. Kita jaga kita. Assalamualaikum and goodbye. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Oceans should be famous because they have everything and more that all sorts of other celebrities who are famous have. They are powerful, they are beautiful, they're striking, they're unique, and they are majestic.
So the oceans should be famous because they've been underrepresented in the past decades, and they're in a state now which, over the past 50 years, the pollution and devastation to the oceans, we need to do something about it now. So to make the oceans famous, we'll put it on the radar of everybody, even people who are landlocked, to raise awareness of what we can do on a daily basis to help reduce the pollution in the oceans and to protect them.
Imagine if you were in a position to order a planet somewhere, right? You know, and you say, okay, I want a planet, it's going to cost so much money. And then you say, but I want a planet that I can actually live on, that will provide food and provide air. And then the guy at the store says, well, you're going to have an ocean then. Oh, how much is that? How much more is the ocean? Well, that's a lot, because the ocean's everything. The ocean is everything when it comes to a planet. So that's why we have to look at the ocean now.
There is a lot to do, and you guys, the millennials and the younger people, will have to continue what we started.
But I really want to urge, in this particularly difficult time, for young people to come forward and take part in it. Make your voices heard.
My challenge to the millennials is to realize just how powerful you are and to remember the words of Margaret Mead, who said, never lose faith that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
I would urge all millennials to become social entrepreneurs, to combine their business with the social value, or have the social value first and put a business behind it. It's that combination of getting a solution going with power behind it in a sustainable way. And you see that starting. Social entrepreneurship is, I think, the center of life for the millennial generation.
And empower the crowd, seriously. Experts are great. They know all the ways not to accomplish things, all the problems with doing it. But you give a kid or a car mechanic a couple of tools and an idea, and the world is their oyster.
And that future will be a society where the oceans and humanity are integrated probably almost seamlessly. it's going to have to be one big functioning system with us part of it.
The future of the ocean, I would leave a question mark without a word, because that word depends on what you guys push the world to do.
The ocean is where I come for refuge. It's a natural, beautiful medicine. We need to make the ocean famous so that future generations can experience what we often take for granted. Hi, my name is Hannon Bloomer and I'm a member of the Sustainable Oceans Alliance. SOA has provided me with unforgettable experiences and invaluable opportunities. Some of the professionals that I grew up idolizing are now my mentors, helping me develop my passion for oceanography. I've engaged in dialogue with heads of state, experts, and advocates at the United Nations and national conferences. It is our generation that together will be the wave of change.
Most of humanity knows the ocean's out there, but doesn't experience it, doesn't live in it. And so it's being destroyed with nobody watching. And it's time that somebody watch.